Well, good morning and welcome to today's webinar. This is Advanced Tools in Lutheran Service Builder. My name is Peter Frank, and I will be the host for today's session. If you've attended a Builder webinar before, chances are you've already heard me present. This time I've got some help because as we're getting into the advanced tools, it starts to get a little bit above my level of expertise. But a little bit about myself before I introduce Matt. I am the Senior Marketing Manager of Church Supplies here at Concordia Publishing House. I've been working with our group that works on Lutheran Service Builder for a little over 2 years now, but I've been within our church software area for about 6, mainly focused on church management software. But as a whole now, I'm going on over 11 years with CPH, so it's been great to do a number of different things. My contact information is on the screen. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. Email is the best way to get a hold of me. Otherwise, my phone number is there. It takes you right to my office, which I always double check is on forward to voicemail during these presentations. So don't try calling me now. I've had people try to call me during the webinar to get their questions in, so please don't do that. But allow me to introduce my guest today, Reverend Matt Cobbs. Matt, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Matt, you are the lead developer for Lutheran Service Builder here at Concordia Publishing House, and you've been with our team for a little over 2 years, or is it already 3?
It's actually closer to 3 now, so yeah.
Time just flies.
Joined about 3 years back and working in emerging products, develops all the various software things, Lutheran Service Builder, Church 360. And before that, I was out in the parish as a pastor, so kind of have a foot in both worlds there.
And that really just gives you a good insight as you're developing. It's not just about the code, but you've got this personal connection to the people who are using the software. Kind of gives you a unique insight.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, it's, having been out there in the parish, it's a lot easier, I think, for me and a couple of my coworkers who also have that kind of similar background. To really kind of put ourselves in the shoes of the people who are going to be using it and try to think what would be useful, what would be helpful, what would be a cool feature to add. So yeah, and I think it's been a good asset to have as we've been developing, that it's not just some foreign concept to us. So
it's really a unique situation that we're in here at the publishing house, having 3 ordained pastors called to serve as programmers. But hopefully that gives you, our customers, some confidence to know that we're just not sending this out to an agency to build this, that this is built with the people who are in the same ministry as you. All right, well, a few housekeeping items before we begin with the training today. First off, we've prepared about 50 minutes for presentation, and I think we've got more than enough material to go into that 50 minutes. The last 10 minutes are set aside for question and answers. So we'll try to keep the questions focused on the topics here today, and if there's something that we haven't covered that you have a question on, you can reach out to our support team afterwards, and I'll have that information for you at the end. But I know that as we look at advanced things within Lutheran Service Builder, there's a number of different paths we can take, and we can't get them all today. We are going to ask that you ask questions throughout. What that'll do is it'll put it in a queue and give me an idea of just how many questions we have. So if we don't have a lot of questions, which I highly doubt, but if we don't, then we'll go over that 50 minutes. But otherwise, we're going to try to keep it at 50 minutes. Now, we are recording this webinar, so if you'd like to watch it again after the fact, if there's something you didn't quite catch, or maybe you'd like to share it with somebody else at your church, we'll be sending that out later today. And if you are watching this recording, thanks for tuning in after the fact. I'm sorry you couldn't be here live, but you can still follow up with questions to our support team. All right, I make a few assumptions before every webinar, and my assumptions today are different than they typically are with Builder webinars. Typically, I start at kind of ground zero and work my way up. But today, I'm expecting that you understand the concepts of Lutheran worship, and I'm expecting you understand the basics of Lutheran Service Builder. If you are brand new to Service Builder, this will probably not be helpful to you. It'll probably be over your head, but you don't have to be a full-fledged expert to get good info out of today. We will be starting at kind of the middle ground and working our way to the top from there. Well, I'm also expecting that you have a subscription or a free trial. I know we have a lot of people who use Lutheran Service Builder 2 and are just starting to get into the new version. That's what I'm expecting, is that you've at least got that understanding of Lutheran Service Builder as a whole, whether it's version 2 or the new version. But if you don't have a free, or if you haven't gotten into the new version yet, you can start a free trial today at lutheranservicebuilder.com, and we can work with you to get your Lutheran Service Builder 2 subscription converted to the new version, and we'll talk about that at the end. But let me ask you to tell me a few things about yourself. So I'm going to put out a poll, and the first question is to ask what your primary role in the church is. We know that people wear many different hats in the church. What is your primary role, not a collection of all of them, because we know that that's many and varied, especially if you're in a smaller congregation. So we'll give that another couple seconds to fill up. All right, we've got a good portion answered. It's still coming in, so I'll give it another second. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that off, and I will share those results so that everybody can see who's here today. So we have got about a third are pastors, almost half are administrators, and then some musicians, other called church workers, and other in general. And if you did mark that other, I'd be curious to hear what your role in the church is. So please go ahead and put that into the chat and let us know. That'd be helpful information. Just gives us an idea of who is here today. All right, and the next question that I want to ask is what you consider your Lutheran Service Builder skill level to be. Like I said, if you're a newbie, this may not be as helpful to you, but I think we'll probably have, looks like we're more in the middle range. I'll share these results in just a moment as well. Yeah, it looks like the majority are in that intermediate range. We've got a couple some who are advanced, and then a few who are experts. So that is great. All right, let me go ahead and close that poll, and I'll show you. This is kind of just the sweet spot of where we are going. That if you turn it on 90 degrees, it would be that nice bell curve. So I won't read all those numbers, but very good. All right, well, let's go ahead and dig in. Make sure, oops. Hopefully my screen will go back to sharing. All right. There we go. All right, the outline for today. So we're going to look through some advanced search techniques, and I'm going to share a couple, and then Matt's going to lead me on into some more advanced tools there that'll hopefully help you. He'll walk me through that so that you can follow along as well as he's walking us through those. Then we're going to get into best practices for bulletin formats, and the concepts we'll talk about can be applied to presentations as well, although we're going to focus on bulletins today. And then we're going to dig into custom elements in my worship resources, and that'll wrap us up. We could talk about that in a lot of details, but we want to save time for that last thing, which is question and answers. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch my screen over, there we go, to Lutheran Service Builder. And if this looks like it's not in a browser, don't be fooled. It is. It's a thing with Google Chrome that you can save it to your desktop and open it in its own window. But that gives me a little bit more space. And then one thing I like to do for webinars is zoom in a little bit. And you can do this as well within your browser. I hit the control button and use my scroll on my mouse. There's a number of different ways you can do that. But we're going to start off by clicking on September 16th, the 17th Sunday after Pentecost. And you'll see there that you've got the propers. Now, we're not going to plan out the service as we go into search. What I want to direct your attention to is in the top right corner, there's a little magnifying glass. That is the search button. That'll take you directly to the global search. Now, this gives a full screen experience, whereas if you're planning a service, you'll get the sidebar that pops out and you can make that larger. But this makes it a little bit easier for today. It's the same functionality within the search. We've got a little bit more with exporting that we can do from this global search here. And this is where we'll start. So let's start off by talking about a few of the basic things. You can see on the left-hand side, you've got a how to search and a narrow your search. And Matt, I typically call this hashtags. Is that what you would call it as well when it's got that pound symbol?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of more of a type filter. I don't know if hashtag is exactly, I'm not sure what the right term is, but just it is that, but it's the that's the widely recognized, I suppose, term, the little hashtag, the pound sign, number sign. But yeah, those are the type filters. So
good. Sometimes I say, depending on which generation you're in, you might call it pound or hashtag. So, all right, but that's where we're going to start. And what's nice is that this over here on the left-hand side gives you some starting points that kind of trains you on how to search. So we can click on it and it starts to pre-populate that search. But when you go to that hashtag or pound, it gives you, like Matt said, these different types. And let's just type in hymns right now and click enter. And that will give me all of the hymns that are available. And see, it's sorted in there. So if you're used to the browse part of the search in Lutheran Service Builder 2, this is the equivalent. This gives you all the hymns in Lutheran Service Book, as well as about 20 extra at the very end, or kind of the numbers are at the end. They're intermixed in here, I believe. But as you're typing this in, you'll notice that my box is now green. If I didn't have that S in there, it would be gray, which says that's not a valid search quite yet. So when I hit S, it goes, oops, let me make sure that I'm in there. It goes green and tells me that's a valid search. So some of the other types that we have are prayers, liturgy elements, propers, and readings. So that will give you kind of a global type. Matt, is there anything you want to add about types before we jump into exact phrases?
well, yeah, so hymns and prayers will let you do that browse. Liturgy, propers, and readings, I think there were too many if you tried to browse, that we just couldn't put it all there on one screen. And so you'll have to add more to your search term, which I know we'll get into later. But if you're looking to try and browse those, you got to narrow it down. There's too many.
That's a really good suggestion, or a good comment. We can't put all of the readings in Scripture in one drop down. We probably could, but it'd be really long. All right, well, let's talk about exact phrases and then using quotes as well to get that. So if we typed in something like, in this example, mighty fortress, it's going to return results wherever that phrase is used, or both of those words are used. So you can kind of see here that, like, come let us eat, mighty is in there, but it's not the exact phrase. So putting quotes on there gets it that exact phrase and returns just those two hymns. And we'll get into some more combinations as we go, but one way you can do that is say hymns and then mighty fortress. I should probably spell it correctly. So that'll return the same kind of thing where it's looking for all hymns with that exact phrase in there. That's pretty straightforward. I know we're starting at the simple. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Matt?
And you know, that's searching kind of anything that can be searched about a hymn. The title, you know, is obviously kind of the first match, but if it was just in the text of the hymn, it would match that too. It's anywhere that phrase is found. So
that's great. Yeah, I sometimes forget about that you'd be looking for specific phrases within there. And I know, you know, we're so used to some of these hymn titles, but a lot of times you'll remember the second or third stanza, but not the exact words in the first. Well, the next thing that we can look at is down here where you've got some additional fields. So topics, tune, meter, or liturgy, author, copyright, holiday. Let's go by topic first. So if you type in and I click on it, it's if you start typing it in, it kind of pre-fills it. I don't know if you can see that on your screen because it's kind of light, but if I type in TO, then PIC follows. And if I hit tab, it'll pre-fill that. And so we've added a bunch of these little kind of keyboard shortcuts or other tricks that make it quicker to go through here. But if you're looking for, like, Advent is the first one on the list, as soon as you start typing that pre-fills it, and it'll show all the different resources that have the topic of Advent. And actually, it goes with just hymns first. Is that correct, Matt?
I mean, I think the hymns are the ones that have a lot of the topic field populated, but yeah, it will show more than just hymns based on whatever you search. The other thing is, you notice that in the as it pre-populates, some of the topics that are multi-word, you put those quotes around it, and that's how you get that exact phrase, that exact topic as you're searching. So
that's a really good point. Yeah, there we go, baptismal life. And so even if it's not the beginning of the word, so we're just starting to type in baptism, holy baptism and the baptism of our Lord show up here as well. Yep, and yeah, that tab is really helpful to just say, okay, if that's what you're looking for, tab and go through that. All right, well, let's jump into some of the more advanced things. Matt, you want to direct me where to go next?
Sure. We can start by searching for a hymn by number. I was going to take a look at 474. It's my favorite Easter hymn. You notice up at over on the preview, there's the text tab, the melody tab, where you can see the melody, and actually there's a play button. You can preview the tune. But then there's that info tab, and that info tab is also kind of a neat resource where you can kind of take one search result and use that as a launching off point to find other search results. So for instance, this Alleluia, Jesus is risen, the tune is essentially the same as Earth and All Stars. I don't know if you noticed in the melody tab, the melody, this setting has 4 flats. And so I've run into where I want to sing this hymn, but my organist or whoever's playing is throwing up their hands like, it's 4 flats, what are you doing to me? So if you go to the info tab, you can actually click on that tune name and it'll list all of the other hymns that have that tune. So first of all, those are links you can just click on and it will kind of find those other things. You could also click on meter and it'll find all of the hymns with a matching meter, which this one only has the one other, but you can imagine something that's in common meter or long meter. If, you know, you come across a hymn, you love the lyrics, the words, but you don't think the congregation's up to singing the tune, you can find another tune this way. But in this case, Earth and All Stars, that one has 2 sharps, and so you can use that to find the different hymn with a different melody. The other thing I wanted to point out about the info tab is when you click on any one of those links, you'll notice that in the search box, it actually populates the search for you. So all of those links, like, it's not magical links that we program necessarily into the program that take you magical, like, no, we're actually just kind of populating the search field and doing a search with the tools that are available to you. So you can definitely kind of play around, and this info tab is a great place to kind of see not only related information or related texts or anything like that, but then just kind of demonstrating the power that we've built into the search functionality. And so you'll notice you've got, yeah. Well, and then you've got topics, so you could click on Easter, see all your Easter hymns. And I love this. We've got the related scripture as well, and that's tagged per stanza. And so you can find, like, let's say you're in Easter and you want to preach on Revelation, and you could just click on one of those, and it gives you, again, not just hymn results, although you do get hymns, but it shows the pericope. You can actually read, and then any of the readings that kind of overlap or match that, any of the propers that overlap or match that. And so you can really kind of take one starting point in the search and find a number of related resources, just kind of going through that info tab.
I like that you can put in either a single verse or multiple verses, but it doesn't limit you to just that search result. Like you said, it'll be any related scripture. So you can see there that, like, On All Saints, it's 9 through 17, or an alternative reading is 2 through 17.
Yeah, it just kind of checks if there's any sort of overlap there, which kind of lets you cast a wider net as you're looking for, especially with scripture, kind of where it's used in the church here, and all the different resources that might be touching upon that. So
very cool. Excellent. Well, should we look at some combination searches? That's where it really gets very powerful.
Yeah, for sure. So we could search again. I think one of the examples is we'll search for an author, Martin Luther. And so you can just search the author field there, Martin Luther in quotes. But then, Martin Luther wrote a number of things. So we could also just search for the things that have a topic of prayer. And this will get you the Luther hymns that are under prayer. And you could do the same thing with topic Christmas, or you could combine it with something else where you could see just kind of all the different combinations.
Because you can even then put in something like, I don't know, probably Our Father is not the best example. I'm thinking of 2-letter words. Well, yeah, Father welcomes. Does that show anything? Probably not.
Probably not, no. But yeah, each term that you add narrows the search down. And so, Martin Luther, that's a lot of results. And then Martin Luther that has a topic Christmas, well, that's fewer results. And you could conceivably narrow it further, searching from, the phrase from heaven. And that would narrow it down to just that, from heaven above to earth I come. And so you can really just kind of drill in the more information to find whatever you're looking for. Another thought was you can search resources. And again, we've been demoing kind of hymns, but this searches everything. So you could search for the resources associated with a certain holiday. So you could put holiday of Good Friday and see kind of everything that's associated with that. And you've got your hymns, but if you scroll down, you also have prayers and liturgy. And again, this would be a good place to use if you're only looking for a certain type of resource, to add one of those, for lack of a better term, hashtags, like prayers. And it will give you just the prayers that are associated with Good Friday from all the different lectionaries. So yeah, it's designed so that you can combine these terms and really drill down to find what it is you're looking for, no matter how you want to go about looking for it.
That's really cool. Now, one of the things that's different about this search, and what did you say it was 474? Yeah, that you can do here that you can't do when you're planning a service because it's not practical and not necessary, is that you can go and export from down here. Do you want to talk a little bit about why this might be useful if you're not planning a service?
Well, sure. If you just want to get a resource out, you're doing a one-off thing. Maybe you're singing a hymn together as a winkle or something. You don't need a whole bulletin. You just want to kind of have a sheet that someone can put together, or you have your own format that you like how you like, and you want to just copy the resources in. We know we've got a lot of customers that prefer to do things that way. This would also be kind of a good place to get resources out, and then into whatever destination or whatever format. And so from right here from the search, you can choose, maybe you only want selected stanzas to be sung, and that'll update on the fly. And then you can copy, and that will copy the resource to your clipboard in a rich text format. You can go paste it into Word or something else that understands pasting HTML. You'll be able to do that, and you'll get images and everything just as you see it there, which is cool. Print and then export too. We've got a number of different formats, docx, which is the newer Microsoft Word format, rich text format, which is kind of a little more broadly supported, but then and then also HTML if you're wanting to put this on your website or distribute it in an email or some other place where you might want the HTML code behind what you're seeing. So
that's really cool. And what I like about this from a business standpoint is that this is all right within the copyright restrictions. So if you have that HIM license, it automatically reports your usage as you go, so you don't have to think about that anymore. And if you don't have the HIM license, it'll let you know that, well, we need some kind of license, so go ahead and enter that. So it's not a shortcut or anything like that. It doesn't add additional work on the administrative side. It does that all right there, no matter which one of these kind of export, print, or copy that you use.
Well, and one of the, I think the desires for Lutheran Service Builder from the get-go was to make it easy to do the right thing. So
right, exactly. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and jump into formats, specifically bulletin formats. So I'm going to X out of here and go up to the cog and go down to bulletin formats. So we'll step back in just a second, but this is where we're headed, and you can see that there's some default formats. The bulletin formats allows you to define what your export ends up looking like. It's not selecting different elements or content, just choosing how it displays, whether that's in the style or the layout of the page. But I think what we'll start off by duplicating an existing format here. And then we'll show how you can use it closer to the very end. So we've got the default format. I've got a couple actually named default. That was probably from another training. I'll just delete that one. There we go. And then, so we've got default here, creative worship, which has a kind of an Arial style throughout, or large print. And then I've made a couple of my own for other trainings that you may have seen, like your webinar example or Streamlined, where it's just those, the titles. We're gonna get into that, but to create a new format, you go down here to the bottom and you say new format, and it's based on one of these other styles. So we'll base it on default for right now. And we'll say,
and two, if you have a style that you've tweaked and you really like and you want to make something that's just a little bit different, you can also use that copy this format button, and it will base it on yours rather than one of our built-in ones there.
That's really cool. Let's see, if I go ahead and I just change the body style to we'll go and do PT Sans. That's a Google font, so I'll save that. And then I go to copy. And so maybe this one we want to make as our large print. And we'll just change that a little bit, save it. So now I can toggle between these, and they're very similar, but like you said, that's based on mine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us a little bit about some of these tabs over here. The style one makes good sense, and the layout's not too difficult. That's really the export, and we'll look at a few examples of that, but I'm really curious if you can go into more explanation on the content tab here.
Yeah, well, the content tab is showing you what content is available and how it looks, and not like in the font kind of sense, but kind of almost which content you want selected. So there's visibility toggles on all of these. So each part of the service you can toggle whether it even displays or not, which is helpful if you want to make, if you want to have your full service, but then have a different bulletin format, and that's your just reading insert, where you turn off everything, toggle everything off except for the propers, except for the readings. And then instead of creating a whole nother service and a whole nother bulletin, you take the same service, just put it in this bulletin format, export it, and then that's all there is to it to create a readings element. Or you could have where you don't have necessarily the Lord's Prayer or everything printed out. You just have the heading, but then you can toggle what content is shown and print out kind of a more walk through everything for visitors bulletin. I've heard of folks do that. So besides toggling on and off, There's also that content kind of radio button bar where you can kind of pick how content is displayed, and you see the A, that's display the text. The two eighth notes there, that's display the melody. That other one with the kind of multiple quarter notes, that's displaying the setting, which not all the resources have settings, but for those that do, that's kind of the full part, not just that melody line, but all 4 parts, which some people I know are like to be able to sing in harmony, like to have that setting there. Or you could pick that other one, which is the empty box, which is, you know, display no content, just display the heading, the caption rather. And so you can kind of set those defaults, again, for if maybe you like to print out the melody every week, or maybe you like to just print out the words, or maybe you just want the headings. And you can toggle all of that here in your bulletin format on the content tab. Yeah, then there's that show caption, and there are 3 options for that. Default is just kind of like, well, whatever the liturgy wants to do. If the liturgy wants to show the caption for that element, do that. If it doesn't want, do that. Or you can say, no, always show the heading, always show the caption, or never show the caption. And so you can do that for liturgy elements, you can do that for hymns, you can do that for the propers and readings. And then it'll respect that as you go and do your bulletin. The other thing is
pardon me, Matt, when you say default, you're talking about what is in Lutheran service book, right? Or is it different than the actual printed hymnal?
We've tried to keep it as close to what's in the printed Lutheran service book as we can. Though I know, like, for instance, there can be extra information there that isn't in the printed service book. So, for instance, I know, like, the invocation and then confession, absolution, that all kind of flows in a lot of the divine services. And so in the printed book, there's not a separate heading for confession or an exhortation and confession, absolution. Like, there's not necessarily a separate heading, but maybe you want to kind of call out those as separate parts. And so you can toggle that on, and it'll show the caption, and it'll also show the sub caption, which is that part over to the right there. So you kind of got the caption on the left and then the sub caption on the right. And that kind of is able to provide extra information. And you notice it's kind of a weird text there in the sub caption. But we've kind of got a handful of kind of special tags or special placeholders that you can put in that will automatically translate into something that is appropriate for the element piece of content. So having those pound signs around PG, that's showing you the page number. And so you can set that as your sub caption, and for all those elements, then by default, that sub caption will show the page number where it's found in Lutheran Service Builder. You can do in pound signs STS. Okay, so you brought it up.
Sorry, forgot that I had put that in there. So yeah, let's pull that up.
Yeah, so these are kind of the special placeholder text that you can use. So PG shows the page number. PKG for package shows kind of the name of whatever content you've selected to slot into that element. So the name of the hymn or the name of the prayer, it'll show that over at the right there. STS, that shows your selected stanzas if you've selected any. And usually we don't print anything if there's, if you've selected all the stanzas, we just assume you don't need to print stanzas 1 through 5 of a 5-stanza hymn. And then ref there for scripture reference, which most content is tagged with the scripture reference. So again, like the exhortation part of the confession absolution, you can show that scripture reference if you show the caption and the sub caption and set the sub caption to that REF.
Okay. Michael had the question, are these the only sub captions?
Well, no, these are kind of the special placeholders that we have built in, but you can put in whatever text you want. And And you can combine these into and do multiple ones. So if you want the page number and stanzas, you can put both of them in there, and that will. I don't know if that works for liturgy as much, but
You're right.
but it makes sense for hymns if you want to do like the have the hymn number repeated, and then have the stanzas as well. You can do that. Or if you want to add your own text, you could put LSB if you want to put LSB before each of those and really drive home this is from Service Book. And so you can put any text that you want there. And so these are kind of what every element will get by default when you put it there in the bulletin format.
All right, very good. And especially as you're doing the format, you will want to be careful with the custom text in there. But once you're in the actual service, you can do that by element, right?
Yeah. Once you're actually editing a service, and say you want one of them to be different, you can just edit it inline there, and it'll affect just that one element. So these are kind of more like the defaults for when you create a service, it'll do this kind of automatically, but then you can go back and tweak it later if you want, element by element.
That's very cool. Well, let's look at a couple practical examples of this. I know one that we often have questions on is related to the layouts and this folded button here. Can you talk a little bit about this? And I know that we've spent a lot of time in discussions on how this works with Microsoft Word and some of the other word processors, but can you touch on that a little bit and how to set up if you are doing a folded bulletin as opposed to a full page?
Yeah, so you can click that folded checkbox and it will try to assume whatever you're doing the rest of it. So you probably want to change it to landscape, unless you want a very skinny bulletin. But it will, you can do that. We'll let you do that. But you can, what this does is it kind of adds some extra data as we're exporting to try and communicate to your word processor or whatever you're using to print the bulletin, that it should try to print this as a book fold. And Microsoft Office has those kind of flags that you can set, and when everything's working as it should, it'll read those tags out. We followed the format, the standard that they've put out for how to do that, and it'll read it out, and when you go to print it, it'll just kind of do it automatically. I know we've run into some issues. It's a bug with older versions of Word. Sometimes it doesn't read that flag correctly. But you can also, there's a flag that we set in the RTF export, and we found that for people using older versions of Word, they can export the RTF, and often that it'll read it out of that correctly, even if it doesn't read it out of the Word file correctly. Or the other thing you can do is save it as, once you save it, open it, the newer Word document, you can save it as the old .doc format without the X.
Gotcha.
We found that is a workaround too, but that's only on, I think, Word 2007. So if you got anything newer than that, this should all just work out of the box.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
And we've tested this on which word processors, because I know we've got a lot that we've done, certainly Microsoft Word, but then Pages and Google Docs, any others?
Those are the main ones. We've done some testing with Pages on the Mac, and then Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, primarily on, well, for any of those platforms. Google Docs has very limited formatting, especially with a lot of this page layout stuff. That can be kind of limited, and so we weren't quite able to get an optimal experience for that. But we did try it and see kind of what it looks like, whether that's something that people are going to have an easy time with or not. And so, yeah, mostly it's that. We did look a little at Open Office, and again, it's reading the same format as as Word, because they've published that. That's how that format works, and so it should be able to read out and work as expected. Some of the page folded, some of that page fold and that kind of stuff. Other word processors don't always do things the same way. So that I think is the page fold is a word only feature, and mileage may vary on other programs when you try to do that. So.
And that hopefully explains how complicated this is, that not only do we have all these different word processors, like you mentioned, some of the older versions operate differently than the new versions, and so it's exponential, all the potential scenarios that we're trying to address. So you guys have done a great job of programming for as many as we can, and we know that the market is going to continually change as things grow and there's newer versions released, so we'll do our best to keep up with that. But great work on handling so many of those. As I'm looking at our time, we're already cutting in a little bit. Let's real quickly talk about that readings insert format that you had mentioned before. So let's say I'm going and creating a format from the default, and I'll just call this my readings inserts. What are the few steps you would take to do those reading inserts, Matt?
So probably just head on over to the content tab, and you just toggle off visible for headings, rubrics, hymns, and liturgy, and just leave the propers there. And probably you're good to go at that point. You can toggle, of course, whether you want pointing or the Bible verse numbers, whether you want those scripture headings, but beyond that, that's kind of your customization. But by kind of turning off all those other elements, then you can just show the readings. So
that's really cool. And just for our audience, this example here is consistent across all of the different formats. This is not a service that you've set up. It's just an example to show how it'd look. But yeah, that's
right.
Really quick. So yeah, then we can save that. And I'm going to head over to service planning because we're going to start off looking at some custom elements in just a moment. But if I go to then plan this service, and we won't do anything with the service plan. We'll just jump right into prepare bulletin and select divine service setting 1. And then if I go into my reading inserts, you can see that's pulled out everything. That's pretty quick.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's look at some custom elements in My Worship Resources, that broad topic. One that we get asked about a lot, and I'll go through this quickly because I've shown this numerous times, but is the let us pray. And so let me go just to default here so that we've got everything in there. And what this is prayer of the church. And so you can see as I click on prayer of the church, there's nothing there. The LCMS worship office provides a standard prayer of the church for every week. And we'll, after they release it, we convert that to an LSBX format. That's the kind of special Lutheran Service Builder file. So if you go to lutheranservicebuilder.com and scroll down to the very bottom where it says downloads, and we kind of hide this for a specific reason, in that it doesn't help anybody who's just considering Builder. We've got the listing of the available files that are coming up. But what you can do is you can sign up here for email updates. And when we add more, we'll send you an email. So you can just go and click on it from your email. You don't have to be constantly checking. But we're on September 16th, and we're using the 3-year lectionary. And so if I click on 3-year here, it will download a file for me, a zip file, and that way it doesn't get caught up in your browser. And what I'll do is I'll drag that to my desktop. You can't see what I'm doing right here because I'm on my other monitor, but I've put that file on my desktop, and then I'll show you how we can import that in. So if I go up to the cog and click import from LSBX file, I go to desktop, there it is. I'll select that, open that up. So now this has imported a common element, September 16, 2018. And when I click continue, that goes into My Worship Resources. So then what I would do is I would go here to insert element. And look for September 16. And there it is, September 16, 2018. And I just select that, and that's displayed. And I can go in and delete this other one here that's just a placeholder. So that is kind of the common custom elements, but let's dig into My Worship Resources a little bit more. And this is our last topic. We may go past the 50-minute mark just because I've kind of delayed us as we're looking at things. But to go into My Worship Resources, I click the cog and I go to My Worship Resources, and it's under My Common Elements that this one has come across. And you can see I've got other ones there. There is that resource. So yeah, we'll skip the adding folders right now. You can categorize your common resources, but Matt, can you talk a little bit and maybe walk us through creating a different kind of common element? I think we've got communion statement as the example.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll go down and we'll add a new common element. And it'll already have, and you can name it your communion statement. And it brings you to this text editor. Now, one thing to note on a common element, you see over on the side, that's kind of all the different information about the common element. So there's the name, how it appears in search results, and then the caption, which is how it'll appear in your bulletin. And so you may call it communion statement when you're searching for it, but maybe you want to call it, meditations as we before taking the Lord's Supper, something along those lines, how it'll actually appear in the bulletin.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. And all sorts of difference. You can tag it with those topics in scripture again so that you can find it when you search. But otherwise, the text editor is just kind of what you see is what you get type of thing. And so I think you've got the copy of the recommended communion statement from the CTCR. We just are able to paste in there, and it's you can edit the text just as you could a Word, any other kind of word processor. Now, one thing to note, yeah, is you see that that dot by the title over there, and that went away.
Sorry.
Save. No, that's good. We want to make sure that you're done and ready to go with your resource before we put it out there for other people in your church to use. And so you can kind of edit and play around with it as you want, and that's that blue dot saying it's not been saved, but we're kind of holding on to it until you're ready. And then when you're ready, you can hit that save button, and it'll kind of it'll save it and make it so that the updates or if you've made a new resource, the resource itself shows up for other people in your church as well.
Very good. And we'll take a look at how to add that to the service in just a moment. We've also got a responsive prayer. Would I do that under My Common Elements, or would I go under prayers?
You might just do that under prayers, or certainly you could do both. There's that ability to do that responsive type of thing. But then you go down and add a prayer.
Just call this example prayer for now.
Sure. And then we can, again, just paste in the text. I think I sent before. But then you can kind of click on on whatever paragraph. So that first line, probably we want it to be spoken by a pastor or a leader. And so we can just click that, and you've got the that response icon there with it as well. And you can highlight it. You don't have to highlight it. It just kind of takes whatever paragraph you're working with, and it will convert it to that when you choose from the drop down.
That's cool.
And just like that, you've got a responsive prayer done in that kind of hymnal Lutheran service builder style.
That's cool. And still I can add everything else over here. Under here where it says text and name, what is that?
Yeah, so you notice there's that text tab up at the top. You can actually add other versions of the same content. So if we had a setting, for instance, of this to be sung, we could add the melody. And then that name down at the bottom that's text, so that's renaming that tab.
That's cool.
So that as you're choosing in your bulletin, it'll show, okay, here's the melody version now is what it'll show. And so you can kind of have different representations, as it were, of the same resource by adding different content like that.
Very cool. And this would be especially helpful if you're doing hymns. And I think we probably don't have enough time to do hymns today. But yeah, that's cool. So you're almost modifying the interface a little bit to match what you might see in some of the out of the box elements. So
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let me go ahead and close this and we'll show how you can add those in. Oops. Taking just a second here. So these are now available. So if I won't worry about placement right now, if I go into insert an element and I click there, then I can go into search for a communion statement. And that adds that right there. And this is the sub caption that we were talking about before. And if we wanted to put something else, obviously there's no page number associated with it, but we've got that there. So let's talk about a custom liturgy and kind of use that as our last advanced tool to wrap up the presentation today. Why might one create a custom liturgy, Matt?
Well, so you've got kind of the basic liturgies that you get from Lutheran Service Book, but I know people kind of like it a certain way, or you want to add certain things. A communion statement's kind of a great example that you want a communion statement in there for every service that you plan that's going to have communion. And so you can actually then save out this service as a custom liturgy, and then the next time you go to build a service, you choose that custom liturgy and it already has the modifications and tweaks that you've made from before, like adding a communion statement. And so to do that, you notice up by the order of service drop down, there's that save button. And so you can actually take a bulletin that you've made and then save it as a custom order of service for future use.
All right, so I go ahead and save that as my divine service. So that's under uncategorized. So where would I go to modify that even more?
So if you go back up to the cog and hover over my worship resources, that's going to be under my liturgies where you can find that. And so looks like you have a couple there. But we can pull that up, and this is without any of the content. So this is more, if you're thinking in terms of word processing, our service is like a document, and these liturgies would be like the template. So here you're modifying the template, and you can use that insert up at the top to insert different placeholders or other things. If you wanted to take that communion statement and move it someplace else, you can drag it up and down and reposition that.
Sorry, I jumped ahead. So yeah, you can drag and drop it from both places.
Right.
Okay.
So, and then when you hit save, it'll save it, and then you can go back and when you're planning a service next time, it'll use this template to build that service.
So if I wanted to delete something in here, how would I go about doing that?
So that'll actually be over on the right-hand side in that inspector panel. And you see next to the rubric, there's what you have selected. There's delete, and that'll actually delete that. Now something worth noting, like if you've deleted something and you're like, oh no, where's it gone? You can go down and hit that reset button, and basically between saves, you can always kind of go back to your last save, your last time that you've saved. We try to save automatically in the background, but again, we don't make it live until you hit that save button. So if if the power goes out, your work isn't lost. It's all there, but that way you can still kind of go back and control when it's available or when you kind of have those save points. as it were.
That's cool, and that's different than what we've had before. The last thing I wanted to ask you about, so when I click on an element, even like here, confession of sins, that's coming straight from Lutheran Service Book, but it looks like I can modify that. When I'm modifying that, what am I doing?
Well, you're kind of creating your own, kind of spinning off your own copy of it. So right now it is pulling from Lutheran Service Book, and if you don't modify it, like if we went back and fixed the typo, you'd get that update for free. But as soon as you modify it, you kind of spin off your own copy, and now it's yours, and you're going and you can modify the text or tweak a wording here or there. And that's something you can do, or add some extra spacing as well. And so now you've kind of got your own custom version that you're able to tweak without necessarily tweaking everyone's copy of Divine Service Setting 1.
That's good. Absolutely. And now, does that tweak all of my Divine Service Setting 1, or is it just for this liturgy?
For the services that are based on this liturgy, that'll be tweaking it.
Very cool. So I know we've had that request before, like how do I modify the liturgy? Do I just have to do that in Word? When really this is the best way to do that. You'd create your own custom liturgy, do that once so you're not making the same updates over and over again, because I know some of it is just spacing or formatting. This is how you can do that without always having to remember to do that again in Word. So very cool. Well, I feel like we've still only scratched the surface on My Worship resources because there's so much more that we can have here. But I know some of those questions have come up in our queue. So let me do a few last slides and we'll jump into the questions then. So those are the sub-captions. Again, if you haven't already started your free trial, you can go to lutheranservicebuilder.com. If you are currently on Lutheran Service Builder 2 and you're wanting to move online, the way to do that is to set up a time to talk with our software consultant. And what that'll do is give you this link here, and I'll put that in the chat for everybody as well. So if you haven't moved to the online version, there we go. If you haven't moved to the online version there, you can go ahead and enter your email address, set up a time to speak with one of our software consultants, and they'll help you get up and running on the new version. All right, so I'm going to skip through a little bit and get straight to the last slide here with the contact information while I take a look. And I'm sorry, I'm just seeing now the comments related to the looks like I had stuck with the title slide for a little while at the beginning, so sorry about that. It was mainly all you missed was the words of what I was saying. So looks like I noticed that when I went to share my screen, I thought it accidentally paused. All right, let's take a look at some of these questions here. All right. So one you've already answered, Matt, for Carolyn, who's left, but for the advantage of everybody, Carolyn was asking about Media Shout 6, and that is still in development, right?
Oh yeah, I'm working on that right now.
Well, hopefully not right this instant.
Well, no, not right now, but no, that's currently what we're working on, and so that should be coming very soon.
All right, very good. Well, so Pam is asking if we'll provide the slides for the presentation. We will provide that for the recording. Since I kind of left out some of the slides, I do apologize for that. I may see if I can plug those back in again. But all right, this Nathan had the question. He said, this may be addressed later, but I've noticed that when I save a custom liturgy and then use it again, the Lord's Prayer has the title, but not the content. This was a liturgy based on Divine Service 2. Matt, what might cause that?
So if, let's see, probably the Lord's Prayer there is a prayer. And when you save a custom liturgy from a service, you're going to be getting, let's see, yeah. So it's a prayer, you're going to be getting that placeholder, but not always the content that's assigned to that placeholder. And so that would be my guess. is that's kind of what happened there, is that the prayer placeholder was there, but the content didn't necessarily come over.
Okay.
Which is, if you have kind of a hymn slot, that's exactly how you want it to behave, because you don't always want to sing the same hymn every time. And for prayers, that's usually the case as well. You don't want the same prayer of the day every Sunday. The Lord's Prayer is a little bit of a different case, I suppose, in that respect, because it doesn't change from Sunday to Sunday. So
like here we've got these option columns. If we pulled these out as individual elements, then they could be modified and stay that way, as opposed to having the option of choosing from service book.
Oh, sure, I see what you're saying. Yeah, for sure. Because right now, in service book, you have kind of, it's representing the left column, the right column. And if you always just do one column, you can pull that out and kind of get rid of the option, so you don't have to make that choice each time.
Okay.
Alternatively, you can change which radio button there is selected, and that indicates what the default is. So when you go to do a service, it will choose that one by default. Also another option. So.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Good. All right. Kevin had the question, can you match words with a different tune? And I believe this is referring to the search.
We don't have the ability to kind of combine engravings like that, if that's what you're talking about. Just because I think that would there are ones that it wouldn't work necessarily. I mean, these are image files, and so even if you had kind of the tune and the words, the images aren't going to match up in the same way, and it's just not going to be a good experience. But we know that's something that people like to do, so it's I think something on our radar for further on down the road, to see if there's any way that we could do that without the music department having to do every combination of every hymn with every tune that it works with.
That probably wouldn't work out so well.
Just too much.
And I think that's probably one of those things that is not maybe fully understood, is that while this is coming out of the computer software, it is an image itself that's predefined. It's not being generated on the fly, and so these are connected together. So
yeah, and I know the music department has spent a lot of time to make sure the engravings look really good and are professionally done, and so there's a lot of work that goes into that. So
absolutely. Well, we've got some more questions here. Timothy is asking, is there a way to sort the search results? So if you are searching for, let's just say, topic Christmas. There we go.
I don't think there's a way to kind of resort them at this time. We tried to make a good sense default sort, but it's certainly something that we've gotten some feedback on, and it'd be interesting to explore ways that we could do that in a way that makes sense. But for the time being, I think probably your better option is to try and filter down. So if you're not interested in hymns, you're interested in Christmas prayers, then you do the filter instead. I don't know if we have them tagged, so that was maybe a bad example. But,
yeah, probably was top. Right, yeah.
But yeah, so duly noted.
Sure. Well, and I think that's a key part of it, is that generally as you're searching for something, you have an idea of what you're looking for. And if you don't, and you're just browsing, it's going with that default sort, like you said. So yeah. All right. So Joy is saying she wants to copy the hymn lyrics into Word, but not the musical notes. So if you were wanting to, like on this text, if you were wanting to just get the text out, but not the melody, this is where you just click on the text tab and go to copy. Is that correct, Matt?
That's exactly right. So copy, print, export, that's getting you kind of what's being previewed there on the screen. So to get to just the text, you change tabs. To get to the melody, you switch over to the melody tab. And so kind of what you see is what you get.
Very good. All right. So Michael's saying is now we're moving into style or formats. Is there a way to not have the hymn number before the title when you have it in the caption as well? So let's go over here to bulletin formats. And so I think
and I think that's built in the I think that's built in the data to the caption. And so that's not something we're generating on the fly. That's kind of how it's named in our database. And so I don't know that there's a way to remove that number.
Yeah, so if it seems like it doesn't put the page number in there and the sub caption if it's in the caption. Does that sound right to you, or is the preview not sure?
No, I wonder if you need to scroll further over on the preview, because I think it's over to the right. It's just off the screen. It's hiding.
This zoomed in approach is what is messing me up. Good call. All right. So we've only got a few more minutes and we've got several questions there. What we'll do is we will share this with our team to answer any, because we've got a lot that are coming through here. But let me look for at least one or two more that might not be super lengthy. So this is one that we get commonly. This is from Reverend Olson. In the liturgy, can I get text for the pastor's part since I don't chant, and melody for the congregation's response? I know that's not a simple answer, but if you could give a summary of that, Matt.
Well, the simple answer is coming soon. But the more lengthy answer is that, yeah, that's a common, as you say, a common request. And so besides kind of just the melody content type and the text content type, that's all kind of one or the other, the music department is working on going through and putting in content that is just, as you say, kind of the pastor's part spoken and the response sung. And so that's content that's still kind of being put together, and as soon as it's put together, it'll be making its way eventually into Builder, but we don't have a time frame on that right now. So.
Sure, absolutely. Now, one thing that you could do is add in your own under common elements if you wanted to, by saving the images. It's a little bit of work, but that is probably probably the best way to go about it right now, don't you think?
Yeah, for the time being, you'd probably export the full thing to Word, and then you'd be able to kind of get the individual image pieces and put in just the ones that you're interested in back into a common element or what have you. So.
Okay. Well, the last question.
Yeah, but I was going to say, before you do all that work, just know it's coming soon. So.
Yeah, good point. All right, well, the last one is probably a good one to wrap up on, and it's not so much about the software, but Janet is asking, have you thought of traveling and doing seminars instead of webinars so we could have more hands-on learning? And I would like to kind of turn that back onto our audience, because we've got a large group here today. Is that something that you would be interested in attending and even traveling a little ways for? Generally, we've done that with some of our other software, and there would be a cost associated with it. But typically we provide lunch and things with that. We haven't done that for Lutheran Service Builder because the focus has been on releasing. But as we look ahead towards 2019, we've been considering that. I'd love to hear your feedback if that is something that you'd be interested in doing. It's hard because we have such a broad customer base across the US. So we've tried to find pockets of places where there's lots of Lutheran churches. So we've done seminars here at St. Louis at our headquarters, in Fort Wayne on the seminary's campus, and even before in the Milwaukee area and others. So I'd love to hear that. I think that's a good note to kind of wrap up on, and then we'll answer the other questions after the fact. So please go ahead and put that in the chat as we wrap up. I'm going to go back to my back to my contact screen. If you have any follow-up questions, please go ahead and send it to us here. But otherwise, Matt, thank you very much for joining me today and leading us through this. And
yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, appreciate you taking time out of developing that media shout thing and sharing some of your insight. And to our audience, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day. We hope this was helpful to you, and stay tuned as we'll continue to have more training webinars and potentially seminars on topics like this. So with that, we'll wrap up. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks. Bye.